Good morning, Grenada Caribbean and Pity Martinique. We are live here from the Ministerial Complex in St. George's, and it's a wonderful morning. Trust it's beautiful wherever you are in Grenada Caribbean and Pity Martinique and beyond. And it is November the 3rd, 2011, and again, another day in God's will, and we are happy to be alive. And those of us who are healthy, certainly thank God for that. We wish those who are recuperating from an institution, those who are home affected by some illness, we certainly want to wish you well this morning. We hope we can bring some cheers to you. And those of you who are celebrating a birthday today, or some activity that is wonderful to remember, maybe a wedding anniversary, we say good morning to you, special morning to you, and certainly wish you well. And above all, we hope your friends and your colleagues join you in some celebration. And those of you who are celebrating a birthday, we hope on the job that the colleague workers will take time off and just not say happy birthday, but buy you something special. So let's go with our first guest. We want to welcome our first guest, Barbra. Help me pronounce the second name.
D'Engle.
Good morning to you.
And good morning to you and everyone else as well.
Good to see you.
It's wonderful. I love your island. I really do. And I'm not saying this as a tourist,
Right.
but as someone who has a great love for nature and environments that are not overly developed and allowed to just be as beautiful as they are.
Good. You also come from a beautiful country. You're from South Africa.
I come from South Africa, yes.
I think you are from Qatar.
It's
Durban?
it's KZN, KwaZulu-Natal.
KwaZulu-Natal.
Yes.
Right. That's
And the area that I live in has a very similar climate to the island.
good.
So it's almost like coming home.
It's good to see you, and pretty interesting. You and your husband are here this morning, and he was telling me that both of you sailed from South Africa.
Yes, we sailed via Grenada to Europe earlier in the year. And we're very glad to have an opportunity to return.
That's pretty exciting. How was sailing across the Atlantic, across the Pacific? How was sailing? Just two people?
We were four.
Four people.
We sailed a catamaran.
A catamaran, right?
And we had the worst weather and the worst sea thinkable. And the last week of our trip, everything that could break and go wrong on the boat did. And the only thing that kept me going was the techniques I've learned to deal with stress. Because a part of me was saying with every single wave that hit the boat, I must have been crazy to do something like this. But it was the most phenomenal thing to be close to nature, which is very close to our hearts,
Right.
and to realize that there's only one person, one power that rules this world, and it's not human.
Great. Well, good to have you in Grenada, and a pretty interesting career. You are your profession, change management, conflict resolution, relationship skills, wide variety. But I noticed on this script here that it says you're an astrologer.
An astrologer.
What is
Yes.
that?
Well, you open up your newspaper or your magazine, and most people will go and read the stars
Horoscope.
foretell.
Horoscope,
Yes.
that's right.
And if it says nice things about them, they say, wow, this is wonderful. And if they don't agree, they say, oh, this stuff is rubbish. But in actual fact, astrology is a very old science, because up until the year 1700, at the time of Isaac Newton, astrology and astronomy were the same science.
Okay.
Astronomy, as we know, is the measurement and the recording of the planet's orderly movement. And thanks to astronomy, our satellites orbit the Earth and our space programs continue. Astrologers use exactly the same astronomical data that the astronomers use, but we have gone a step in a different direction. Astrology is first and foremost an empirical science, which means thousands of years ago people used to watch the stars move. And of course the word planet comes from the Greek word planetes, which means a wandering star. So the ancients would see a star in a certain part of the sky, and they would say, how interesting, when that star's over there, we have noticed certain things happening on the planet. And certain people born at the time when that star's over there all seem to exhibit very similar characteristics and tendencies. And so they conducted a research and an observation and a testing over thousands of years, so that when we look at astrology now, it's not just what do the stars predict for me, but in fact it's a vast body of information regarding the psychological and spiritual and mental and emotional makeup of humans.
I think you said it's empirical. It means there's evidence that it does exist. Some people will question that.
Of course they will, yes, because for so many years, in the beginning of time, astrology was called a sacred science, so it was only taught to priests and kings. Because of the understanding of the cycles of time, you know, when to call in the harvest, when the rains were going to come. This was very powerful information and was vital for ruling the people effectively then. And so they called astrology an occult or arcane science, which means kept away from the general public for their own good.
Today it has become a very commercial activity.
Yes, it's very
a very significant part of the newspaper,
exactly.
The media. People want to know daily,
yes,
what is my horoscope saying?
That's right. You see, over the years, people have, I think everybody has a great need to know why they're dealing with these particular things right now. I haven't yet met anybody who'd say, well, I wish God could take this away. They say, if I knew what this was and why it's happening and more or less how long it's going to be, I can handle it. You know? So that's what astrology actually is. It's a study of the cycles that seem to affect every single person in their life. We all go through times where things go well and things don't go well, and some people will say, yes, it's just bad luck, or you have displeased God, or it's just chaos happening anyway. And for me, it's been really important to look not so much at the predictive side of astrology, which is, of course, has given it a bad name because everybody asks an astrologer for a prediction. In my country, one of our well-known public broadcasters is a sports fanatic, and he always asks me on air, come on, Barbra, tell us who's going to win the cricket. And then I'd say, those things cannot be predicted.
What can be predicted?
What can be predicted are the cycles. Because if you were to look at the way that the planets move around the Earth, each planet takes a certain amount of time to do a complete orbit of the Earth from where a person is. We have the Moon, which does a 28.5-day cycle. We have the Sun that does a 365-day cycle, 366, if you add up all the odd minutes. We have the planet Mercury, that in astrology rules communication, also zooms around the zodiac, and we'll get to the zodiac as well, because a lot of people can argue about that too.
The zodiac sign.
The zodiac signs, right. Yes. In the early days, when the zodiac was designed or symbolized, where people started to see pictures in the heavens regarding the stars that made up each collection of planets and stars in the signs, the zodiac, the belt the zodiac's actually an imaginary belt of signs around the Earth, equal to the Earth's equator.
Okay.
So if you look at the Milky Way is fairly narrow. So there's a celestial horizon, and there's a celestial equator, and there's an Earth equator. And that's all part of astrological calculations. But what has happened over time is that the Earth has not stayed still in the same spot. The Earth has also moved. So the planetary background has shifted. So when we look at the stars today, the constellation of Aries as we see it now is not in the same place as it was a couple of thousand years ago.
Okay.
So that's really very technical.
Help our viewers to appreciate the scientific judgments that are made in whoever the writers are with the zodiac sign, because there are people who listen to their horoscope on a daily basis and determine what they will do. And in fact, let's take gambling, lottery.
Exactly.
People would look at their sign and say, look,
is this a good day to gamble? Am I going to win? Am I going to lose?
Precisely.
Yes, yes. And that is the one thing that serious astrologers take very, 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 very close to heart, is that each life is very special. Each person is a unique combination, and each person has the one thing that God can't take back, and that's the gift of free will.
Okay, the gift of free will, that's for sure.
Yes, you see. So astrology, we have a maxim that says stars incline, they do not compel. So even though you may be feeling very good today, the moon might be conjunct Jupiter, which makes you feel great about everything. An astrologer will always say you may be inclined to take risks. Some of them may be foolish and some of them work out. It's your choice how you decide to work with these. But humans tend to be a lazy lot.
All right.
And it's very, very rare to have somebody say, well, I really feel good about gambling, and I have members in my family that gamble, so I understand that. Let me just wait for this urge to pass. But as I said, humans are pretty lazy, and they'll much rather do what feels good right now and worry about the consequences afterwards. And that's what astrologers attempt to do, is to give people guidance as to how long these cycles of optimism or depression and constriction are going to last, so that the person can make better decisions for his or her life.
People in Greece must be doing that.
Well,
they would need to know that.
There's actually a very, very interesting planetary combination that's been forming over the last couple of years. And it's the planet Saturn, which rules in astrology limitations, consolidations, rules and regulations. And that is in opposition to the planet Neptune, which rules things that are vague and cloudy, like schemes and misconceptions and idealism. So what we have here is the planet Neptune that inspires people to be spiritual, unrealistic, idealistic. Yes, it'll all come right. No, we don't really have to worry about that. And Saturn is saying, oh yes, we do need to worry about that. We need to know, what are you going to do about that? And if you've read your local newspaper, on the front page is an article that says exactly what the planets have been indicating. What we believe and what we didn't do, hoping that it would work out well in the end, is now faced with reality that says, ha, so what you going to do about this now? And each of us faces the same kind of challenges in our lives. So we may find, if people have perhaps children who haven't been treating them well, and they've just allowed it to continue, and Saturn will come in and say, this is time for us to draw a boundary and put our foot down. So we may find that some people are going to be feeling confident enough in their authority in their particular space and circumstances to be able to set some boundaries. The wife of a gambler may, for instance, say, this is not good enough. Either you gamble with less money, or I go and talk to your boss and I take your salary and I'll give you something to gamble with. You know, so there are various ways in which people can then make good decisions once they will understand what's happening.
One thing I perhaps could ask you is that there's a talk of climate change now, and
yes.
all that you have said seems
yes.
to fall in some line.
Exactly.
Does that have anything to do with the cycle of the climate change that we know beginning to wander around?
There's an entire field of astrological study that really looks at the effects on the climate from the planetary influences. Now, a lot of scientists will say, oh, you know, that's a whole lot of nonsense, because how can planets have an effect on another planet or another human? But we humans are a bundle of electromagnetic energies. You know, we have an ECG, and our brain waves can be measured. Yeah. So we're very responsive to things that we can't always see. And we have two planets in our environment that do have a direct result on the Earth. The first one is the Moon, which affects the gravitational forces and gives us our tides. And the other planet that really has a major impact, that they don't understand how, is Jupiter, because it's a radio giant, so it radiates radio waves. And humans are very, you know, they're starting to do research now about the dangers of cell phones, and people living near cell phone towers tend to respond, and their bodies are showing signs of being affected by something other than just their normal environment. So there's a lot to see. But yes, to get back to your question, we have the planet Uranus, which in astrology rules dramatic and unexpected and erratic occurrences. And Uranus is moving through the sign of Pisces, and Pisces rules water and the oceans. Mm-hmm. So if you were to take, just on a simple level, the equation of some kind of erratic energy that will affect a fluid and easily movable environment, it's possible to see that weather change could happen. So as an astrologer, I haven't studied that part of it. So though I would love to say, yes, I believe it would have, but it's a highly specialized field, and my field is human relationships. Okay. So, but it really is. It's quite interesting the way that the planets are lining up, because they all indicate a good couple of years where things will change, on not only on a political and economical and personal level, but surely on a physical level as well. And that's why it's so important for people to understand, and that's why I love astrology. So is that we sometimes don't know what we're capable of until we're tested. And astrology can help us see how long the testing is going to happen, so that we can constantly see ourselves in relation to what's happening and kind of like keep ourselves on the right path.
Let me ask you finally, how much has the commercialization of just about everything on the earth affected your profession?
Well, there are a couple of really well-known astrologers. Mm-hmm. Some who have put their predictions out there and been laughed at. Mm-hmm. Some who are just making a very good living out of their websites and whatevers. Most astrologers are actually very good. There are just the odd ones, just as we have good politicians and
bad ones. Yeah.
There are the odd ones who've spotted the market and have gone in and exploited it. And of course, on the other side, there are people who are just too willing to believe what someone else tells them to do instead of, you know, exercising their mind.
Too willing to believe what someone else has
Yes.
told them. I like that one.
Yes. And unfortunately, that is the problem, is that a good astrologer will assist the person to begin to believe in himself and his or her potential and real skills, because many people have skills and talents that they never discover because nobody's told them that they're worth looking for, that they are potential within him. So people who don't know what they're capable of, or don't trust their own intuition and common sense, are very easily led by that. But we see that in every, you know, in Africa we have our traditional healers called sangomas, and 90% of our population will first consult with their sangomas, their tribal wisdom. There are a lot of traditional doctors that are now using astrology. So people, we're always just looking for a little bit of guidance. And some people will just follow the ones who say, my brand of guidance is brighter, sparklier, more effective, etc., etc. So yes, it's a lot about marketing, but there's a vast field of astrologers who work beneath the surface, right. The ones who have regular clients, who do their best to give their clients all the information the clients need in order to make better choices for themselves. At the end of the day, that's it. No astrologer really wants to be a guru.
Okay.
But we do love to see people living up to their fullest potential.
Right. You have a private practice?
I do, yes.
Right. So that's your profession?
Partly, yes.
Partly.
Yes,
right.
But it's one of the things that I love. One of the things that give me a great deal of pleasure and is really very effective is working with people, right. Doing relationship astrology and helping spouses to get on with each other, parents and children to get on with each other, and also for vocational guidance, that children can be guided in the direction of their real, very real and innate talents and potentials.
Work with schools, institutions. It's a service that you provide across
not to schools, because you must understand, okay. Schools are run by the Ministries of Education, right. And so we need something scientific for that. But it ties in very, very nicely with the vocational guidance that is already given at the school. Right. Because the vocational teachers may say, well, according to the questionnaires, the child has these kind of skills. But sometimes a child has other talents that eventually will become the chief choice of a career in life. And it's our joy when a child isn't comfortable with what they have been given, to look at other options so that the child and the parent can make good decisions for themselves.
Well, I wish you the very best. You're going to be here for a little while again?
I believe I will be.
Right, good. You're going to sail back? You and your husband going to sail back again?
I believe you will.
How many days it took you? You and your...
To sail from South Africa to Europe?
Yeah.
We were on the boat for just over 7 months.
7 months.
Yes. We sailed an old boat.
Okay.
So we spent a lot of time fixing.
Okay. That's very adventurous.
Well, you know, there's a fine line between adventurous and just plain crazy, and I haven't figured out which one is which. But it was a wonderful experience.
Both of you look very happy, very contented. So I believe it would have been a wonderful experience despite the many challenges.
Well, yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Good to have you, and let me wish you well. And Barbra is from South Africa, the country, the home of the great Nelson Mandela. And we in the Caribbean are very familiar with cricket and rugby. They didn't win the rugby this time. They were beaten by New Zealand. You didn't reach, you reached the semi-finals. So New Zealand won the World Cup. You were home of rugby too. And of course, we do follow most of all is your cricket. Right. Do you follow cricket too? Not very much.
I must admit, not really,
Not
because
really.
my father used to play club cricket when I was a child, and it was very boring.
I'll see no more. Well, we like it in case we follow Jack Callis and everybody else. But good to have you.
Thank
And
you.
I wish you a safe passage back and continue to enjoy Grenada.
Thank
It's
you.
great to have you.
Thank you so much.
And let me say good morning to your husband who is listening and watching us. It is 28 minutes to 8. This is Spice Morning for November the 3rd. If you're leaving us now, we want to wish you well on the job. Whatever you're doing, maybe you're leaving for the beach or the gym, we certainly want to wish you well and trust that it will be a wonderful day for you.